I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Tuesday, January the 29th, where a lot of these lots, especially in the northern plains, the Midwest, and fairly far south, are going to be freeze-dried here middle of this week, and a lot of the guys are looking forward to it. But temperatures are going to get dangerous up in the Midwest, the upper Midwest, the northern plains. Some regular temperatures that are just as scary as your wind chills get whenever it gets really bad, but way below zero, and that's going to be hard on equipment, hard on cattle, hard on people, hard to get the cattle fed and everything. But when you get down in the kind of the meat of the Midwest, they haven't had much of that bitter cold weather. They have had wintry weather, but they're kind of looking forward to that freeze dried, because a lot of those lots that you couldn't even move in, especially your producers that are bucket feeding and stuff like that, some lots you could barely get around in your muck boots. Shoot, Wednesday or Thursday morning you'll be able to feed those cattle in your Sunday school boots. Just walk out there on the hard manure there, and it's not that slick. Sometimes it gets a little sharp and comes right through the soles on you, but that's kind of what we're looking at. And we did see some prices on especially feeder cattle down in the southern plains, where it's not going to get quite so cold, that were actually higher than some northern plains sales on better cattle, because of the preparation for this bitter cold weather that's coming. But let's look at the board on Monday. Opened higher, which is a plus. February live cattle futures up 35 cents at 126.40. April up 52 at 127.37. So not too bad for a Monday. January feeder cattle futures up a dime at 143.47. March up 72 cents, 144.35. Your weighted average on last week's negotiated sales, direct sales in your 5-area feeding region, they had a bigger movement than what a lot of us expected. Biggest movement they've had for a few weeks here, especially for another down market. But 90,800 head, that's probably what the packers would like to at least get bought, and that's probably what we need to be selling to kind of stay cleaned up. But you compare that 90,800 we had last week to the 55,500 we had a week ago, but 118,400 head they sold the same week a year ago. But we talked about the market on our last couple of visits. $123 lower. A lot of these cattle, the dressing percentage on them is pretty poor, so might be coming back in the meat higher than what the market was a week before at 124. But actually, if you look at that, the 123 market, which we've all agree is, but there were several sales in the northern plains there that were above that earlier in the week. Actually, your packers had pretty much already tipped their hand that they were willing to pay more for cattle earlier in the week, and then the rest of your sellers were just unable to take advantage of it. But your weighted average on all the live steers that sold in the 5-area feeding region was 123.29. You know, how do we average 123.29 on all the live steers if the market was 123? Because there was some trade at 125 earlier in the week. I talked about it, thought the guys might be able to seize that, but they weren't able to. There was a few deals at 124. And anyway, so on a weighted average, your live steers were only down 69 cents from the previous week's weighted average. So not too awful bad, really. And the same deal goes for your dressed market, which your dress sales are at 197, which we all figured was steady. There was some cattle that sold at $200 or $2 a pound, and guys were unable to take advantage of that either. But we ended up having a weighted average on dress steers of 197.22 in the 5-area feeding region. That was actually 23 cents higher when we just kind of assumed that the market was just steady on dress bid. But not too bad of a week, really, and a good movement, which that's going to keep things going into a week here. Like I said, this bitter cold temperatures. You know, once the cattle get up on top of that mud and it gets solid, and the cattle are actually probably going to like it a little better. with that bitter cold weather. They've got that rumen, and if they're eating good, that thing is just like a furnace. And if you don't believe it, when it gets really cold out, that you can just see steam coming off those cattle. They're making their own heat, and it'll feel good to them to be able to get around. But where it's really sloshy and almost just like frozen water and ice there, then those cattle will have a chance on slipping and falling, splitting out, things like that. But it's just what you have to deal with in the wintertime. But we haven't had weather this bitterly cold in some places for 20 years or more, so it's really going to be cold. Nationwide, they sold 115,200 head negotiated sales. Of that, 25%, or about 28,800 of those, was for the 2 to 4 week delivery, and not too bad. It doesn't look like they're really trying to set anything up. But look at your feeder cattle market, your real-time index on Cattle Market Central at the late in the day on Monday, sitting at 141.63, down 89 cents from the end of last week, because we just had a lot of bigger volume Southern Plains sales and not much to offset that. So going to be a little bit off. Actually, your markets were higher all around where it was tested. Oklahoma City, the Oklahoma National Stockyards, big run there, 11,400 head. All classes of cattle selling $2 to $7 higher on the mid-session there. Pulled these in the evening. They were still selling cattle there, but a lot of good stockers they noted there. And getting this information from National Livestock Commission, look at the strings of cattle they had in early rounds there. Sure, they had at least one more set to sell there, but over 2,500 head there. And you look at some pretty big rigs of cattle there. One almost 2 loads of cattle, but big strings of cattle in Oklahoma City, and glad to get that information from National Livestock Commission coming through Cattle Market Central. Joplin Regional Stockyard, 7,300 head there, steady to $3 higher. Good market in Joplin. I tell you what, we saw some good prices come out of Fort Scott, Kansas on Saturday. If you watched the last visit that we had, or the Monday feeder flash, right in that area right there, that's commodity cattle country, but the corporates and other buyers in there pushing hard for feeding type cattle. And look what they did in Joplin. You can see it here on Cattle Market Central, as Joplin is a DV auction customer there too. But 194 head of steers, weighed 714 pounds at 150 and a half. And then look at these bigger, heavier steers there. Now this quote I'm going to give you is higher than many northern sales up in the upper Midwest there on Monday, because as I said, they were getting ready for those bitter cold temperatures. But good market in Joplin. 64 head of 803 pound steers in Joplin through the ring, 145.75. We're going to be a little spotty on the rest of your visits for the rest of the week as we get into the meat of the NCBA conference here. Got some meetings, got the Feeder Cattle Hall of Fame coming up on Tuesday evening. Going to be busy with that, so probably going to miss you next visit, but should be back here towards the end of the week. But that's your feeder flash for Tuesday.